we can have this forum to get together, and so happy that Father Mark could join us today. So a little bit about the format. Today's going to be Q&A. So Father Mark's going to take us back a little bit in time and his journey to Siena, from when he came to Siena till now. Please feel free to type in questions. We'd like to keep this casual so we can interject questions as we go and also have time at the end. Little bit of an introduction about Father Mark, although I think everybody knows him well, and certainly he'll add to his story as we talk. But Father Mark, I know, is a proud member of the class of 1983. And after his Siena days and becoming a friar, went on to do many super important things in ministry, from being in the Navy to being parish priest. And then we're so fortunate that he came back to Siena in 2014 as the guardian of the friary, and now as our vice president for the mission office. So Father Mark, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about what campus looks like today. I know you're hoping to be outside, but it's a rainy day, but we're all missing being on our beautiful campus. So how's it looking?
It's looking very green, actually, with all the rain that we've had. I was hoping to actually be outside to be able to have the Siena Dome in the background, but it's still a little bit misty, but it's looking good. But unfortunately, it's very, very quiet, as you can imagine. The college is fully open. The campus is really shut down during this time of the pandemic.
Now, Father Larry was sharing the other night in another group that there's a lot of deer now up at the townhouses.
Deer and also wild turkey are kind of taking over the campus a bit.
Oh.
I don't mean the friars, I mean the real animals.
So they've made their way down. Yeah, they used to always be up in our area. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll all look forward to being back there with you soon. So let's get started. My first question for you, Father Mark, what brought you to Siena way back in the fall of 1979?
Wow, that was a long time ago, Mary Beth. So the fall of 1970, I don't know when I first stepped foot on Siena's campus. I was probably about 5th or 6th grade. My sister Jean, who's the class of 76, played basketball at Siena. So I used to go and visit and watch her play basketball. But I first met the Franciscan friars down on the Jersey Shore, Long Beach Island. And it was because of that example, the friars there, that I was thinking about priesthood, thinking about becoming a friar, and looked at really Siena and St. Bonaventure University pretty seriously. But because of the connection with Jean, the location, and I had an opportunity to visit Siena as a high school student, and really fell in love with it, and was happy to go to Siena, and had 4 really great years there.
That's great. I enjoyed looking in the yearbook and finding some of your photos. Mm-hmm. And get in preparation for this. That's always fun. Actually did have the 83 yearbook in my family room, as I told you, since I shared time on campus with you. Even though I didn't
Fond memories when Father Dennis and I both had big hair.
Times in the Rathskeller, right?
Probably DJ, you probably had more hair then too.
Before I ask you what brought you back in 2014, just share with all our viewers, if you would, a little bit about what you did in that time from when you graduated to when you came back.
So I graduated in 83, then I worked for IBM for a very short period of time, and then I joined the friars and went through the initial formation program. As every friar does an internship. I did my internship at St. Bonaventure University, both in campus ministry and communications. And then when I came back from that internship, I spent some time at a parish called St. Francis of Assisi in Triangle, Virginia, which is better known as Quantico, where the crossroads of the Marine Corps. And that was my first assignment by coincidence. At St. Francis, I was there for 4 years as a priest, and then moved down to Raleigh, North Carolina, and was there for 19 years. And it was really serving as a parish priest, which I enjoyed very much. And then as a part of my connection with St. Francis and Triangle, asked permission of our provincial if I could join the Navy. Navy chaplains serve the Navy, the Coast Guard, and the Marine Corps. So I was working with Navy chaplains on the base there. And he gave me permission, and to make a long story short, went through their equivalent of boot camp, which was at the time in Newport, Rhode Island, which was a great place. I was there in the wintertime, but it was still just a great place to be. If you've ever been to Newport, the Cliff Walk, and a great place to run, and just real enjoyable. And then in after 9/11, on January of 2003, I was what's called an involuntary recall, meaning I didn't raise my hand and said, "Here I am, send me." They said, as a Navy reservist, "We need you," and they sent me over to the Kuwait War, Iraq and Kuwait, with a group of, I was sort of like Father Mulcahy in the TV show MASH, because I was with the Hospital Surgical Battalion. And just a quick story, one of the things that would happens with the chaplain is you always have what's called a silver bullet, if you will, to the commanding officer. You can always go and say whatever needs to be said in terms of, and there were some untoward things that were going on, which same things that would happen on a college campus, but happening there. And it was getting to be a little bit out of hand. So I said to the CEO, I said, sir, this may be becoming a little bit of a problem, because it's getting maybe a little bit out of hand. And so he made a joke of it, and we showed the movie MASH, not the TV show, the original movie, and said, this isn't a training film, folks. We've got to keep military discipline and certain things along those lines, because we were in a war zone, a combat zone. The sirens would go off and all times of the day, and we'd have to run to a scud bunker to kind of protect ourselves. And it was probably, I would say, one of the most difficult times in my life, and yet also one of the most rewarding times of my life. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of, it was lonely, and yet I developed and realized I had resources within myself that I otherwise would not have experienced. I developed some friendships there that I continue to keep in contact with because of the intensity of the experience, and also felt very privileged to simply be a priest in the midst of the war that was taking place at that time.
Thank you. So moving forward a little bit from that time, and I can't help but think that what many people are dealing with right now in isolation may parallel what your experience was, calling on those reserves, those inner reserves.
Yep. Sort of a play on words as a reservist, but in the inner reserves that we all have, sort of, to use the old cliche, it's like a tea bag. You don't really realize the taste and strength of it until it's in hot water.
Good metaphor. So let's move forward in time to 2014. What brought you back to Siena?
Yeah, actually, I had been in Raleigh for 19 years. I knew that my time was up. I had been the associate there for the first 9 years and pastor for 10. Absolutely loved North Carolina, particularly this time of year with the Albany spring. In North Carolina, it starts way back in February. And so I enjoyed it tremendously, loved parish ministry. But I knew it was time. And Father Kevin Mullen had just been elected provincial. He was still the president of Siena. And with the friars, there's a day where you're by your phone, you're going to get a phone call if you're up for a transfer. And so the call that I received asked me if I would go to Siena as the guardian of the community. And I said, sure, I love Siena, be happy to. But I said, that's not a full-time job. That's sort of a collateral part-time. He said, well, actually, I'm thinking of creating this new position of mission officer to really help us be more intentional, because eventually we're going to be having a lay non-friar president. And at that time, Brother Ed was the interim president, and the expectation was that he was just interim. He was just there for the college to put together a plan to hire a permanent president. As it turned out, he became that permanent president. But when 2014, I said yes to both of those, and moved up that summer of 2014, which is a great, Siena's a great place to be year round, but particularly in the summertime, and really enjoyed coming back home to Siena. And it was in many ways like a homecoming.
That's great. I can't believe it's 6 years.
6 years already, yeah.
Doesn't seem possible. So question in the chat was a question I had too, so it's a good one from Beth Hazelton, as well as one I thought of. What's changed since 1983? What was and I know you were back in that time in between, but what stood out the most? And then when you finish that, what's remained the same?
Sure. Though I had been back in between, I'd never been back when students were here full time. So I can remember kind of the first time in September 2014 walking around and like, where is everybody? I don't recognize any of these people. I don't recognize any of the faces. I mean, I still had in my mind that I would see classmates in some strange way, but I think the college has changed tremendously in terms of growth and expansion. And I would also say the services that are offered to students today, from writing lab to tutors to the Office of Student Success, I don't think they existed back in 1983. At least I didn't take advantage of them, which is probably why my cum was so low. But certainly all the things that are offered for students today is something in terms of student success, that when Siena accepts a student, they're going to support you and help you get through. There's also many more clubs and activities than I recall, and certainly ways for students to get involved in all sorts of differing ways. And I would say the campus is much more diverse than I recall it being, in terms of students from not only economic backgrounds, but of color, of nationality. The international students that are on campus add tremendous life to the campus. So there's been quite a bit that has changed, and all. Even, for example, the Siena Fitness Center. I don't remember. The fitness craze was not around in 1983. What's remained the same? I would say the Franciscan tradition. I mean, though there are less friars on campus for sure, I think Siena is probably, that's part of what my position is about, is really being more intentional about the Franciscan tradition. So the creation of the mission office, for example, 6 years ago, and really in the past year, the mission office has been strengthened and reimagined. So it's really that Franciscan tradition, Catholic identity, what is at the heart, which is, in a word, I would describe Siena as community. That Siena community is still strong. It's still very much present, and still from campus ministry to student life to academics, really fostering that sense of community on campus. I would say that's what's is most consistent through the years.
Terrific, thank you. A little bit of a fun question in the chat. Were you editor of the yearbook?
I was editor of the 1983 yearbook. Have a few pictures of me, again with hair and much thinner, much more lanky, and could eat anything I wanted to. At this time, can't do that.
That's great. And it sounds like let me come back to, again, kind of on the fun.
Thanks, DJ.
On the fun side. Was it your sister Jean and her friends who showed you how Siena was the fun place to be?
That sounds like a question that my sister wrote in.
I lost something from Pat.
From Pat Marr. But actually, yes, because even now, my sister and her crew of friends, I mean, they have reunions every year. I mean, not always here on campus. I mean, throughout, but they knew how to have fun. They enjoyed themselves tremendously, and it was great to be Jean's little brother and being a part of all that fun.
That's great. Father Mark, moving forward a little bit, during these last 6 years, you worked very closely with Brother Ed. Talk to us about what the transition has been like in this past year to non-friar leadership.
Sure. Brother Ed and I knew each other for probably over 35 years. I met him back when I was in high school, and then certainly when I was here at Siena, his sister Sheila was a classmate of yours, Mary Beth, actually, and knew him at that time, and then lived with him after graduating Siena in Brookline or Novitiate. So Ed's death was really a great shock to all of us here at Siena. It's a personal loss. At times, it's still hard to believe. I expect him to be coming into the rec room. He had a certain schedule. He would come in about 6 o'clock after evening prayer, and he was really a delight to live with. He was always thoughtful. He had a great, wicked sense of humor, very dry, but very poignant, on target, could see through things. And he loved sports, especially basketball. Both the women and men's games were always on his calendar. The transition, I would say for me personally, it's been difficult because it's a loss of a friend as well as a brother and a colleague, somebody who I've known for a long time. But in terms of the transition, I would say, Brother Ed, I'm sure, had no idea he was doing this when he chose Dr. Margaret Madden to be his vice president for academic affairs. And initially, when she was the acting president when he went in for this medical procedure, which unfortunately he didn't survive. But she made it a real easy transition. I would say as easy as anyone could hope for. Dr. Madden, or Maggie as she's known on campus, is really not only a great leader, but her leadership is calm, it's competent, she's knowledgeable, she really knows higher education, particularly in New York State. She and Brother Ed worked together on expanding and bringing in new majors and programs, including the MBA. And I think she has also grown in a great appreciation for Siena's distinctive value, our Franciscan tradition and Catholic identity. One of the things that I love to do is lead pilgrimages to Franciscan Italy, and she and her husband Tom came on one of the Franciscan pilgrimages along with John and Mary Held. It was a great experience. I think it helped her to gain a greater appreciation for not so much the friars. You can meet us on campus, but to really to walk in the places where Bernardine of Siena walked, where Francis and Clare of Assisi walked, and again, so she's our president, and she's doing a great job. And 50 years ago, we admitted women to campus, and here we are with a woman as our president. And I think in that sense, technically Ed was the first lay president because he was a lay brother, but obviously a friar well steeped in our Franciscan province. And so the transition was more sudden in some ways than we anticipated, though we were anticipating it some years ago in terms of that this was eventually going to happen, hence the creation of the mission office and all. But Maggie has done a tremendous job, just a natural transition. And she, when we started looking for a permanent president, she was very clear that I do not want to be the permanent president. I'm happy to serve. I'm happy to help out and do what I can do. And she's, as I said, has been really magnificent. So I personally was hoping that the search committee, the board of trustees, would really choose someone who not only was a great leader like Maggie, who also embodies the Franciscan tradition, but that was really a priority of somebody who embodies the Franciscan tradition. And I think in the choice of Chris Gibson, he's an alum like us on the call, class of '86. So he was a freshman when I was a senior. I don't recall that we ever met. Maybe we had a beer at Muddy's Hole together or something like that. I'm not sure. But what I love about Chris is he really appreciates and lives the Franciscan tradition. He's a leader through his 29 years in the Army, rising to the rank of colonel, retiring from the Army, and then serving in Congress by his own design, limiting himself to 3 terms. He's really a servant leader who I think embodies the best of the core values of Siena College, which include compassionate leadership. And in fact, there was a friar who was concerned about what Chris's leadership style would be coming from the Army. And I guess having been in the Navy and understanding leadership in the armed services, to be a colonel, you don't just issue fiats. You have to be collaborative. And Chris has been collaborative in terms of not only in combat and really rallying the troops together, but also in his humanitarian mission that he carried out in Haiti. And one of the things about leadership in the military is for example, officers always eat last. You make sure that your people have what they need first. And I think that's an example of Chris's leadership that he brings to Siena. And most of all, because he knows Siena, he loves Siena, he embodies the Franciscan tradition. This is not just another step for him, if you will. He's so talented, he could do. In fact, if I've heard anything negative, it's people who said, "I wish he was the governor of New York instead of the president of Siena College," because he's just so incredibly talented. But I think for Siena, he's going to smooth this transition as the one that Maggie has begun, and really help us to be more intentional about what it means to be Franciscan. Because I say, there are friars on campus, which are great, but we're all called to be Franciscan in terms of, and the mission is lived out through the people. It's not lived out simply through the friars. It's all the people. And that's one of the things that I'm a shameless salesman. I'll give a little plug for the pilgrimages that I do, because there's no better way to get to know really the mission of Siena College than coming to Assisi and all. And Dennis has been a leader in the past for the pilgrimages. It's always a group of friars who lead it. And we have a lot of fun. Even sometimes the pilgrims try to drink the 6 of us to a grave, but that's not going to happen.
I know it's a disappointment for you and those that were planning to go on this year's pilgrimage to have that.
Absolutely, yeah. We were planning on doing one this, actually in a couple of weeks, but obviously that's not going to happen at this time. So we'll put that on hold, and when things are safe, we'll do that again. But I think Siena's in good hands in terms of the Franciscan tradition because of the intentionality, which begins with the board. The friars are certainly behind Chris and looking forward to really and obviously these are really challenging times to be a leader in higher education because of the virus and everything that's been happening. And Chris has been leading a recovery task force to say, what do we need to do not only to open in the fall and the end of August, September, but to be able to really open with confidence that our students are going to be safe, our faculty staff are going to be safe, we're going to be able to provide the in-person instruction that I think everybody talking to faculty and students are missing. Online is okay, but it's just not the same as what Siena is really about.
Right. Thank you. That's so great to hear your, very rich and thoughtful reply, and I think comforting for all of us too, since you're working so closely with both Maggie and President-elect Gibson. So thank you. A lot of questions are coming in the chat, which is terrific. Before we do that, tell us about what a typical day is like for you. Now, I know now typical is different than 6 weeks ago typical, but with that too, just share what the mission office is all about.
So the mission office really brings together 5 different offices on campus. It includes the Damietta Center, which is our intercultural center. It's named for a place where Francis embraced the Sultan. So it was this Christian and this Muslim during the Crusades embracing one another, having a real sense of appreciation and dialogue, respect for one another. So our cross-cultural center is named after that encounter, which actually happened 800 years ago, literally 800 years ago. So the Damietta Center, and then the Sister Thea Bowman Women's Center. Sister Thea was a Franciscan sister, passionate woman. Really, she is up for canonization. But the Women's Center really helps to not only engage and empower women, but also works with men as well in terms of what could be called toxic masculinity. I mean, how do we live well together? And it has a spiritual focus as well. That the Women's Center is part of the mission office. The Franciscan Center for Service and Advocacy, which was established by the friars back in the 1990s to really look at not only service, so for the hungry, how do we feed the hungry? But then also advocacy, why is there hunger in the world? And the Franciscan Center for Service and Advocacy really does both. It's service and advocating for, and you can get a minor in Franciscan studies through the mission office now. And campus ministry, which we're all familiar with, it's the chaplain's office, which provides not only the spiritual, sacramental, but then also really helps to foster that sense of community. And the mentoring program, which is, when I was on students, it was Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and there's a transition in which we're going to partner again with Big Brothers, Big Sisters to strengthen the mentoring program. I would say one of the sad things is, given the virus, that hasn't been able to happen in person, and in this summer, our summer camps are not going to happen in the way that they have in the past. So that's a real, I think it's one of those things that just allows Siena's mission to be fulfilled in our local community, particularly with those who are marginalized. So those 5 offices come together to form the mission office to really help us to, again, be intentional about who we say we are and hold ourselves accountable to that. As far as a typical day, there is really no typical day, which is what I love about my job. I'm also an adjunct in the management department and teach a class on Franciscan leadership, and then also a class on Franciscan service, which is tied in with the Franciscan Center. So I enjoy being in the classroom and teaching. I work with alumni as the alumni chaplain and work with development in different ways. I like to say I've been in every funeral home in the Albany region representing Siena to offer condolences, respects to some of our alumni and friends of the college. My office is literally in McGuire Hall, which is the admissions building. It's where all of us first started. I like to say I'm up in the penthouse there. It's really the attic, but penthouse sounds so much more rich. And that building is really just filled with energy and enthusiasm for Siena. And so I meet different people who are just coming in, oftentimes prospective students, things like that. One of the things when I came that I miss is some of the pastoral responsibilities that I had as a pastor. So I help out as chaplain over at Catholic High in Troy to be their sacramental minister. I work with the Colony Police Department. Just had a funeral yesterday for a relative of one of the officers, and then work with the bishop in the Diocese of Albany. they've asked me to be the mentor for their newly ordained. So there's all different things. So I just live by a calendar, and it's great that, and one of the things that attracted me to be a friar was the diversity of ministry, the rich engagement of people. I think I see Colin on here. Colin's probably working on some of the paperwork for joining the friars. Is that right, Colin? He's one of my recruits that I'm failing miserably on. So Andy Murphy, I'm working on him as well to join the friars, and he's been terrific helping us with live streaming the Mass on Sundays. But so again, I'm a shameless salesperson, not only for pilgrimages, but for things that I believe in, like the friars.
Your days are very busy. I can hear that. Yeah, I've learned some things that I didn't know about you. But
I love it. Yeah, I miss not walking the campus, so I'm putting a little weight on, because normally I'm going from meetings to meetings. Now I sit here and I'm on Zoom with all my meetings.
But I just do want to share so everybody can hear, because I think not everybody maybe has experienced this element of how you interact with us, which is that ministry to alumni. And we're grateful that Father Mark signs and sends a letter to alumni who've lost a loved one, and we include our prayer book with that. And it means so much. We get the notes, or Father Mark will get the notes, and it's really just that special thing that is, I think, unique to Siena that we can do. So we thank you for that. And I will say that too. I've sent you many prayer requests, and yes, you're right out there when anyone.
And the friars are happy to. We have a book in our chapel with prayer requests. We're happy to lift those prayers up, whether it be someone loss of a loved one, or just illness, or whatever the prayer request might be. We're really thrilled to be able to receive those and lift them up.
So if alumni wanted to do that, Father Mark, what's the best way? Should they email us at alumni and we
Sure.
can forward, or you, okay?
Whatever's easy for people. We work hand in glove, and so in that sense, whether through you, or you can go directly to me, either way.
Terrific.
Happy
Thank you.
help.
That's great. So a few questions coming in. You answered this a little bit, but just to acknowledge a question from Frank Pugliano: what might the campus look like in the fall when hopefully students are back?
Great. Hey, Frank, good to see you there. Hopefully we've got, I know you're a great basketball fan, so hopefully we'll have our team practicing and getting ready to win the MAC championship again. But what will look like, hopefully it'll look filled with students and things like that. And as the exact answer to that question, I don't know, in terms of, because some of that will be, we're going to need to do testing to make sure everybody's either negative or has the antibody. So we want to make sure that the campus is safe, and that we can welcome people back. And we're doing everything we can to put everything in place, and we've got some time to do that, so that students are back. We're doing great in terms of our incoming freshman class. The numbers are looking very strong and positive. So we're actually, even over the summer, one of the things that I and my colleagues will be doing is reaching out to our current students. We've been doing a You're Not Alone video series since this all started. Every day, a different community member or friar, sort of just 2 minutes or less, hope and encouragement. So now as classes conclude, we want to continue to keep in touch by making sure every student gets a phone call on a pretty regular basis from somebody on campus here, just checking in, how's it going, you need anything. Obviously, some of our students are going to be greatly impacted by the virus, whether it's, and sadly, we've had students who have lost loved ones, siblings, or parents. One of our alumni lost both his parents to the virus. Just the sadness there. Reaching out to, that's what we know. So I'm sure in making phone calls, we may discover things that we don't know and ways that we could be able to reach out. But I'm looking forward to August, when it's sort of a trickle effect of sorts. The athletes start coming back, the resident assistants start coming back, and the place starts to fill up again, which is what I miss most about Siena right now.
All right. Here's a fun question. So we need fun. From Mike Udsid: describe the feeling of holding the Franciscan Cup this year when we beat Bonaventure.
Well, the key word there is when we beat Bonaventure, which is a great rivalry. Unfortunately, I've held the cup and had to give it away in previous times, particularly last year at Bonaventure at the Raleigh Center when we the year before we lost, I think by 40 points. It was a real spanking. It was just terrible. So this year, and I think it just proved that Brother Ed loves Siena more than Bonaventure, that we won the cup, and it was a great experience having all the friars on the court there and being able to really give the cup to the men who won the game, the players themselves, who were just terrific. And coincidentally, or interestingly enough, David Blake, who's my counterpart at St. Bonaventure, the guardian there, he's also a Siena alum. I think he's class of '87. So it was two Siena alums holding the cup up there. Of course, Father Kevin is officially, technically a neutral party, but we all know, if that's not really true. His blood bleeds green and gold. So he was a part of that, and it was really a great experience.
That's great. And Mike's also wondering, Father Mark, if you have a friendly rivalry with a current Bona friar.
I'm assuming maybe you're saying Russell Murray, or who are you thinking? Bona's friar.
Down there, Mike?
Can you hear me?
There he is.
Yeah.
There he is.
No, I think you answered it with David Blake there. I was just wondering if there was a friendly email that goes back and forth, or the cup's home where it belongs kind of rivalry.
Absolutely. Of course, David's, though he's at Bonaventure, he's a Siena grad, and he, even before the game, he was like, "I hope Siena wins. You guys need this more than we do." And I think it was really because of the loss of Ed and all that it was a real lifting of our spirits. And Ed's family, the Coghlan family, was all there. And to say all there, I mean like all there. They're a big family, an extended family, and I think half of South Buffalo was in the Times Union Center that night.
Thank you, Father Mark.
Thanks, Mike. That was a great question. Nice trip down memory lane and a happy time, that game. This is from Anthony Piero. Hi, Anthony. Wedding was canceled on April 25th due to coronavirus and the future bride actually having COVID. Very sorry to hear that. We'll now be getting married at Siena on July 18th by Father Dan, so that's great news.
Great.
While the two of us may not be able to drink the friars to the grave, would love to share a celebratory drink with all the friars. That's great.
That's great. So that's July 18th? Is that right?
Yes.
Great. Actually, we've had a couple weddings due to the virus where I had Kathleen Hess, who some of you know, she works in financial aid. She was scheduled to get married the end of March at historic Old St. Mary's, and we went ahead with the wedding anyway. We had it at the grotto, so it was outdoors. We followed all the governmental guidelines, and I have a speaker that I use for pilgrimages in Italy, played Pachelbel's Sonnet on it, and her dad walked her to the altar, and it was really as beautiful as it could be. It wasn't what was anticipated, but it was really terrific. And Father Larry had a wedding the following Saturday, but so that could be a backup. It's not what you want, but we'll do whatever we can to help you, Anthony. But congratulations to you and your beautiful bride, who I think is that behind you there. Great, congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
There he is. Yeah, congratulations, Anthony. Thank you for being on.
Of course, thank you.
So we're coming to the end of our time. I think we've covered everything. There was a question about the mission office, but I think you really thoroughly covered that, Father Mark. Andy Murphy shared, if you want to look in the chat, if you haven't seen that, where you can view the You Are Not Alone series. I personally find it very uplifting to see the different videos each morning when we look at our digest, and it helps me too when we're separated. So I encourage you to check that out. Does anybody have any other questions? You feel free to type in the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you'd like to. Final question or remark.
Hey, Father Mark, quick question. Colin. Yes. As a Duke graduate, as well as a Siena graduate, a couple of years ago, because both schools obviously are future national champions, most likely, I would assume. If that was to be a matchup, what team would you root for?
That's a great question, Colin, but it's an easy answer. And I never thought that this would happen, but Duke and Siena did play each other actually in the fall of 2014. And so it was So I was not torn at all. Siena is my first love. Went to the game and wore my habit on the in the stands there. Saw a lot of parishioners who were season ticket holders and Duke fans and all. And one of the highlights, actually, which was not for that game, we actually played very respectably. At one point we were ahead. We ended up losing by 18, which for Duke wasn't against Duke wasn't bad. They had a good year, but was on admissions trip down to Raleigh. Colin and we went to some high schools using some of the connections that I have from the students that I know. And one of Colin's dreams of sorts, you can tell the story, Colin, was to see Duke's campus and Cameron Indoor Stadium. So we were able to get in, and Coach K was there on the floor. He acknowledged us as he had one of his assistants throw us out because it wasn't an open practice. But for about 90 seconds, we were in there, and it was great to be there.
Can't thank you enough for that tour again. That was terrific. And we saw the Cubs win the World Series.
That's right. That's right. It was October.
Thanks, Colin. Oh, a couple other questions came in. So we'll do these before we close. This is a fun one from Rob White. Best meal at the Friary. Now there's good cooking at the Friary.
I tell you, there's not been a bad meal at the Friary ever. And we, I'm pretty basic. I like Italian food, so I would say our chef's name is Mark. He does a great job. His bolognese and pasta, probably one of my favorites.
You're making us hungry. That sounds great. Another great question. This is from Joe Koyan. I hope I'm saying that right, Joe. Hi, Joe. This is a terrific question. How can alumni get involved with the mission office's initiatives? Can they?
Absolutely. There'd be lots of ways to get involved, from some of the different service opportunities that are provided that we do with students that alumni are welcome to be a part of, that depending upon what your talents, skills are, will make the connection with you. On different task force and ways in which we're always looking, like Bill McGoldrick, who's with us, a Siena alum. He's on our mentoring program task force. He's our wisdom figure on that, which is a nice way of saying he's been around since the beginning of time, or at least since the beginning of the mentoring program. He really was one of the first as a college student. He's class of 68. So he's been very helpful using his expertise to help us reimagine and strengthen how do we better do the mentoring program and recreate the partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters. How do we look at the summer, and using some of his connections with the city of Albany. So there are differing ways to be involved, for sure. Just send me an email or through Mary Beth, Joe, and we'd be glad to find out what you're good at, and we'll make a connection.
That's great. Great question, Joe, and thank you, Father Mark. I'm just going to take one last look. Beth DeAngelis, who is the director of the Women's Center, part of the Mission Office. Father Mark's wonderful to work with, and the Mission Office is grateful for his leadership. That's a nice comment.
I owe you, Beth. Thanks.
Any last comments, everybody, before we wrap up today?
I just want to highlight, I can't help but notice, if you see John Held, over his head, there's a fan that's circling around. I look forward to the day when we need that here in Albany.
Yes, yes. I think it's owed to us, right? Some nice spring weather.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank you all so much for coming on. What a great turnout, great conversation. Father Mark, this was really awesome. And I want to thank all of you these past few weeks for coming on. I know some of you have been regulars with this program, and we pulled it together very quickly. I thank my team for being part of this, the whole Alumni Relations and Development team, and people really like it. So we're going to keep going with Saint Circle. We're going to go to a monthly format moving forward, so watch for something in June so that we can stretch this out. And we really anticipate that even when we can be back together, we'll continue doing this, because it's just a really nice way to pull people together from all over. Feel free to email me either at my direct email address, mfinnerty@siena.edu, or our alumni mailbox, alumni@siena.edu. If you have other ideas that you've heard of or things you might be interested in for virtual programming, it's a tool that we're going to keep working with, and we're so happy to be engaged with everybody. It's really, I think, brightened our hearts to see your faces on Fridays and stay connected during this time. So again, Father Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth, for hosting this and for doing a great job.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. We have such a great team at Siena, and please all stay well, help each other out, be kind, stay in touch with us. We look forward to seeing you virtually and in person very soon. Look at our website too. There will be more events coming up from our whole development alumni and alumni relations team in the weeks to come. So stay tuned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.